Oh, okay. I'm literally stretching my back from sitting at my desk right as Max goes, here we. So, it has been another very, very good, very busy week. I hope you guys understand and that we are very busy and we are working very hard to push this thing out. Very proud of the team, very proud of everything we're getting done, the testing cadence we've kept up. So a lot is going on. I'm going to start off with a couple of good news items.
Where's your costume?
Crap! All right, hold on. Crap. Totally forgot. All right, we'll do this the crazier way. I can get into the cost. This is how busy it's been today. I'll do it live. Okay, so the really cool thing, as I look up at the camera again with my costume, the really cool thing is we are checking off a couple of items on our Beta 1 list. These things have been something that have been gestating for a while. Mark's gonna just be like, what are you guys doing?
Are we allowed to do this on Twitch?
Yes. Of course we are. I've seen stuff on Twitch that's way worse than this. Let's just finish
Worse
this up.
or better?
Here we go. Can you see my whole body in here, or am I?
We can see enough. It's sort of censoring your eyes.
Okay. There we go. So, my daughter may have had a hand in picking out this Christmas present. Okay. Back to you. So,
Thanks, Andrew.
Really good news this week. We're checking off 2 items off our Beta 1 list. And I'm going to have a little bit of an asterisk under both of them. I ran around a lot there. The first one is the guilds. JB checked in the first pass of our guild system end of last week, I think it was.
Yeah, sounds right.
Beginning of the week. We've done some testing on that. We are still going to do more. JB is beginning to move into more UI functionality and putting a little bit more usability on top of everything. So we're still going to do more with it, but the main functionality is there. This is just how much more padding we want to put around it. If you'll note in our Beta 1 list, we have groups and guilds. We're going to take some of the guild work and move it over to the group system. So we're not going to check that one off yet. The other really cool item we're checking off, which is something Tim and I were talking about, we've actually had this in a check-offable state for a little while, but we wanted to get a little bit farther on it. We wanted to get the rehabilitation system in. We wanted to make sure everything was working. This is make sure I said it right. Items exist in the real world, can be dropped, traded, picked up by any player, and persist in the world. There's 2 things that we're probably going to look at around that. If we get time for the UI, we're going to look at maybe doing just a nice trade window with probably a little bit of art around it and everything like that. Right now we have Diablo-style trading where you can put an item down, it persists, and then another person can pick it up. So what we're going to try and do is do a little bit of interface work if we have the time. The other thing we may need to look at once we get into closer to beta there, and we've got a lot of players in the world, is how much noise is going to, or how much, memory that gets taken up when we're dropping items all over the place?
I don't know.
Oh. I do know that there's going to be a rendering issue if there's just weapons scattered all over the place. Right. So we're going to have to see.
There's some performance implications.
There's
of
performance
having lots
implications
of items in the world.
Yeah. So we know that might be an issue. We just won't know until we've got a lot of people just throwing stuff all over the place in large battles. So there might be a little bit of work needed there. So the good thing is 2 items checked off. We've got some other items queued up that are still being worked on that are getting closer. The good news overall is kind of like what we've been saying over the last month and a half, was that a lot of people are working on bigger projects. A lot of those got dropped in 2 weeks ago, and this week was primarily a lot of bug fixing, and we're starting to transition some people into smaller tasks as we get more into some of the gameplay elements, including a lot of the combat. So we're pretty much on track with what we've been saying was going to happen. of course, we're just as excited as you guys to play the game. So just bear with us as we keep making this a nice solid build. To that effect, this week has been just a lot of bug fixing because of all the work from the previous week. So as we go through the top 10, you'll see a lot of focus on bug fixing and stability, mainly because that took up a lot of time. And if you've done any of the testing this week, all of it was based around stability. So I'm going to quickly segue into testing. Thanks for the IT alpha and beta guys who jumped in, beta 1 guys who jumped in this week. We ran a few different tests all around the same concept of stability. The weekend of the 24th, we had a beta 1 test that didn't go as well as we would have wanted. Typically when we get to a beta 1 testing point, we want things to be much more stable, and that stability is usually represented by, you can get into the game, it's not crashing constantly, the servers aren't crashing, anything that keeps you from actually testing the game, those things are solved. Unfortunately, we saw several bugs rear their head. Some of them weren't happening until I think we had the server up, 36 hours or something like that.
Yeah, that test, we did a lot of planning for that test where we had the server up and running for like 4 or 5 days before we even like started letting folks hop on, and so we felt pretty good about it. And like literally 5-10 minutes after we threw the switch to let the betas in, like stuff just started going weird.
Yeah, so we did a bunch of massaging and figured it'd be best just to see what was going to happen. We got a bunch of information out of it. Several people immediately tackled it the beginning of the week. We put those changes out on Wormling, which would be the exact same build from that weekend test plus those fixes. And then, of course, it's on Hatchery. We've taken, and just for anybody new, it's Hatchery, Wormling Prep, Wormling. And basically, the way we look at it is each build gets better and gets to be shown to more people. So what we've done this week is we have, right now, we've had it up since lunch-ish tomorrow. Since yesterday, we've had Wormling up. It's got the stability fixes on it. We got IT Alpha Beta 1s in there looking at it. Nothing terrible has happened. Servers stayed up. We found a few other minor issues that we're going to be looking at, but nothing that was the issues from the previous test. So today, what we were prepping is an IT Alpha test of all the changes over the last 2 weeks. John's giving me smiles over there, which includes all the feature changes. I think I've got like an 18-page doc to share with you guys that only the ITs have seen at this point. It includes a whole bunch of new features and a whole bunch of bug fixes and all the stability fixes that are on Wormling. So, real quickly talking about that, when you guys, if you jump into that test, we've removed buildings, manual aiming, and the standalone physics server. We've kept the notes in the doc because next week we're going to be putting all those things in different tests. So if you are actually reading it, spend the time, read the part that says temporarily disabled, just because it's going to be part of next week's testing. We just had a few bugs that kind of reared their head at the last minute that we said this is just not worth letting people play with right now.
Also for the guys, for the betas that are hopping on the server this weekend, we have, again, this build is 2 weeks old. Some of the stuff from that test has also been fixed, and those fixes aren't included in this. So if you see stuff like dude shins missing, that's an old bug. We've got it fixed. You'll see if you hop on, if you're in alpha and you hop on prep this weekend, the shins are finally fixed, which is nice. But we decided to go with exactly the same build that you guys saw 2 weeks ago on Wormling, just with a bunch of server stability stuff fixed. That's been our focus on Wormling, and then but there are more fixes that we haven't pushed over to Wormling that are like clienty things like the shins. So don't want you to think that we're not addressing those issues. They're just in a different place right now.
To that effect, for anybody who's new coming on who doesn't know what we're doing, one of the things we do is try and keep up a good, I keep using the word cadence, we keep catching up on bugs. We don't want to leave our bugs until the very end because it gets noisy and we just have to delay things, so we do have a fairly regular testing and bug fixing process that we're keeping up on. Also, the cool thing is, since so many things have been fixed for you Beta 1 people who can jump in and help us out this weekend, if you guys get it in test, then we get more testing on this, then we can be sure that everything was fixed, and then we can move forward for next week. So like Tim said about a lot of things having already been fixed, next week should feel quite different to you after having looked at this one for the weekend. If you're curious about everything that's changed, it's in last week's update. We went over everything that's in that build, so if you're just curious, go back a week and check those notes out. Okay.
And some of that stuff we'll also cover on the top 10 for this week.
Exactly. Some of those things are in here. So, Tim, I checked off everything else. 2 things checked off, which is fantastic. Let's go into the top 10-ish, and you're going to start us off.
Right. So one of the big things in the last 2 weeks, we've had a lot of people focusing on general server and network stability, and so that's come a long way. It's been really cool seeing some issues that we've had for actually quite a while. I think I came over to Tyler a couple times and was like, "This thing's been there for like a year and a half."
Yeah.
And some of the more recent testing we have done has getting actually game systems in has exacerbated those issues to a point where we just said, all right, we need to knock out all of this stuff and get it into a really solid shape so that we can get the betas in and they can have a good experience. So lots and lots of lots and lots of server stability stuff has been going on this week, and we've just sort of almost all week sort of had 2 builds in parallel. One was the old Wormling build that just got more stable and more stable and more stable, and the other one was the Hatchery build, which is our main dev environment, where we've just been landing a bunch of cool new features over the last 2 weeks, like we've been talking about, that you'll be seeing. But there was some really big features that we've been waiting on for a while. It was nice to see those land, and then also, as Tyler talked about, the people who had been working on those for some time also got freed up to do a bunch of quality of life stuff in other places, and so it's just been really great seeing all that stuff stick. So top 10 number 1, network stability. Hopefully that's come a long way, and you guys will get to see it on Wormling this weekend.
Oh, and the other one, it's also there too.
Right.
It's on prep.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it is on both servers. Building related bugs, we found it wasn't a thing that was on Wormling. We did a bunch of changes to our low level building stuff that will allow us to add a bunch of really cool features down the road. But we wanted to get the low-level infrastructure stuff out of the way early. And that came with some growing pains, as happens in software development. So this week we also got a bunch of those knocked out, one of which was a server crash. It's actually very rare that our game server itself crashes. So we saw that happen and went, holy shit, and found it fairly quickly and got it knocked out. So I was really proud of Brad and Rob, who were working on that. And then there was a whole bunch of other stuff, just performance improvements and stuff that's rolled out over the week. That's been nice.
Okay,
yep,
I'm on 3. OIT performance. So last update we talked about OIT, which is order independent transparency. I will not pretend to be the rendering client engineer here in this case, but I can tell you that the whole goal of it was anything that has transparency in it, better performance. So that basically covers a lot of our particles, and in this case we put it in grass particles, some of the UI elements. George checked in actually over the course of the last couple of weeks 3 different check-ins. This one was a performance tweak that he dropped in. It's kind of the beginning of that. We're going to look at it next week and see how that does. So the cool thing will be is if this is a stable thing and if we want to show it, we'll put together like a test of just a bunch of particles and just see how that actually performs. So yeah, the end of that is basically that the whole goal of this is to support the scale of battles we want to have. So
and make them look as good as we can.
So if we're going to have 500 people running around shooting particles everywhere, it's got to run too.
Right.
Go ahead.
So the next thing we've got is the standalone physics server. We've talked about it a little bit in the past, but basically when we started running physics on our server, it ran as part of the game server. So we'd start up the game server and it would run all of the logic sort of in one, all of the game logic, how much damage do you do and what's your gear would all sort of run in one place, and the physics would sort of run next to that. but both of those have sort of grown in their cost, and there was just some weird handshaking that was happening between them that could have affected our ability to scale up to a huge number of users. So we forked that off so that we can run it on its own computer, its own instance with its own memory and CPU and all of this. And also we can make it so that the data the physics server is producing makes it to your computer faster than it did before, because it doesn't have to wait for the game server to do stuff. So what that means is the simulations we run on your client will have more up-to-date data and will look tighter to what's actually going on the server, giving you an overall better experience as you play the game, and also allows us to scale the game logic and the physics independently to meet need. All in all, lots more people in fights, and the people that are in the fights move and look smoother.
Yeah, it's a much better explanation than I gave last week, I think.
But for the guys that are going to be on prep this weekend, we have that turned off because it still has a little bit of rough edges that we want to file off before we do a weekend test with it. But the tech is super cool. It's landed, and we just got to knock a couple of bugs off of it.
I think the plan is for next week is we'll do some smaller scale testing to get Colin more noise on it.
Yeah.
And just see if we can repro the issue and help him find the bug.
Yep.
Yeah, we already have like several tests already kind of queued up in our planning for next week, independent of any bigger weekend test, just because of all the things that have been landing. So Patcher and UI, this one gets its own top 10 simply because JB finished up as in put stuff into review, put it in the game, is waiting for some feedback. We're just going to keep tweaking the orders UI, but in the meantime just hit a pile of quality of life game UI and patcher bugs within a matter of days. So we figured that warranted its own element in here. We still have a few more patcher bugs that we're going to look at, but all in all, there was a lot of progress just knocking out some good quality of life things. Okay.
So the next thing we've got is a second API server for development. This is our web API server that the client and websites and stuff can use to get information about our game. For our game servers, we have multiple shards of these, like Hatchery and Wormling Prep and Wormling. And we do tests a lot of times on Prep and Wormling so that we don't disrupt the engineers that are doing development on Hatchery, so that we don't have to say like, hey, stop checking stuff in so that we can run a test. We've basically done that same thing with our web API server now, so that there is a development web API server that we can bring down while Wormling has a test going, and it won't be disruptive to Wormling. It doesn't sound very important, but it's super important to allow us to do tests and development simultaneously without disrupting each other.
All right, so let's go into animation. Animation is a very important thing to us, and it's something we're focused on right now. It's something Andrew is very focused on. If you want to get a little more feedback on that, check the stream from last week where Andrew and I did the top 10. The gist of this week is Matt had previously finished up a bunch of work on stances. Andrew then used that work to hook up a tag system, which is what he's been working on for the new animation system. He hooked up stances to use the tag system. In this case, the easy way to explain that is it will kind of take a category or a group of animations that all have tags on them. So your character will then know to use that group under certain circumstances. So if you'd seen previous builds, or actually the builds you're going to be looking at this weekend, you'll see guys standing around kind of doing just a little idle. And if you put weapons in their hands, they'll continue doing the idle, and then they'll do their fidget animation, so they'll stab themselves in the head if they were doing this and things like that. So now having these stance setups allows us to pick a whole set of animations, so the characters will then go into the correct idle animation, and instead of doing this, he'll stand there appropriately, like holding a spear or a spear and a shield. Or
We do have a bunch of that on Prep for this weekend.
some of it, yeah.
Some of it. Not all of it, but
I just don't want to commit to going, hey, it looks amazing, because basically once we got this in and characters had a better understanding of what they were using, we noticed immediately there were some data issues that just needed to be fixed, where things weren't being called correctly, or guys were swapping between incorrect animations. So some of that has already been cleaned up and will be part of the next build.
So for the animations on Prep that you'll see this weekend are sort of on that transition point.
Yes.
Where the system is in place and some of the animations have been set up, but not all of them.
Yeah, And let me also preface, as I have been doing, a lot of the animations that we've made, part of the goal there was to cover a very broad range of animation needs for beta combat testing. And we always have been saying that we are going to go back and look at these and figure out what we need to do to make them better. We have already started doing that over the last week and a half. And that's just discussions, trying new things out, trying little tweaks to the system. So when you guys go in over the next few weeks, you are going to see stuff that is the first time you've seen it and the first time we've seen it in some cases. So there's some very obvious things that we're going to tweak. There's some very obvious things that may not look good. There are some things you might like as well. But all of this is going through a transition phase as we just get into a state where we can test the abilities. We do have user feedback. We can get the sounds in, we can get the VFX in, and in the background we're going to be doing a little bit of work on just trying to be like, okay, what's going to make this look really cool?
But that is, real quick, some of the power of like the tagging system that Andrew did is we can throw this broad net with
Yes.
like all your sword attacks. Here's like 3 sword attacks, and we'll do those. And then we can pare that down later on and add a tag for a high attack or add a tag for a sweeping attack. And so as we add more tags, we can do some very specific animations for some very specific things and some very generic animations
I
for
think
a
what
wide
you're trying to say
category.
is we're not in any way intimating we're redoing anything. We're just trying to make it better with the new
Well,
system.
no, and we have a high degree of flexibility where we can do broad strokes, and then we can come back in later and do the cool details.
Yeah, so just FYI, you know, I just want to keep prefacing this that this is all work in progress. So following off of that, sounds. If you're going into the Wormling prep build, which would be the Alpha and IT, there's only a few things that are going to have sounds on it right now. I got to make a note to myself. Can I have that
This is
pencil
the,
back?
This is the same sort of thing where we just landed a
Yeah.
bit of a change to the sound system. We got some of the data in, but it's on that transition period. So everything isn't quite hooked up to the new system yet.
Yeah, so I'm making a note to myself about the testing. So part of what Gabe is starting to do, working off of Andrew's work, is use the tagging system to set up more robust sound, using the sounds and hooking up new events. Right now, we have a fairly basic make a sound when you attack. That he put in, and we'll do a little bit of testing on that just to make sure the tech works. DB has already begun putting in all the other sounds, and then we'll just keep layering on top of that, and then we will layer that system into VFX as well. So like he said, very much work in progress. So on that build, you won't hear all the sounds you used to hear, but they'll be back next week. Animation, so asset side of things, I kind of touched on this on a 2-for-1 earlier. This is more the actual making the art. Scott and Sandra have been working on two-handed axe and great hammer animations. Sandra, we realized one thing that would make our animations look better was better blending between the upper and lower body. Sandra went in and did some tweaks to the hammer animation. Scott has been working on additional animations with a different structure, I guess would be the best way to put it, so that we can test different ideas of what will look better. That's, like I said, I think I've kind of touched on that already. Place of Power. So Dion is back working on the Place of Power. We had some issues looking at it last week where just the scale was getting too big. So your guy looked really tiny and the pieces looked really big, and that's one of the problems with game development I've noticed. You get in there, I make a big tree, and I get in and I'm like, well, that tree looks tiny, and it's just that third-person camera. So she's been doing a bunch of like minor work in there, putting rocks and pebbles and stuff in there, and with all my available time, I'd love to tell her I'd jump in and help, but I don't know if it's going to happen. It's just such a huge structure that it's just a big time-consuming thing. We also handed a bunch of stuff off to Cross to do more VFX work, and that immediately made it apparent that we needed some tool support setting VFX up on models. So Bull's been a champ helping us out with that this week and into next week. Let's see. Oh, that's it. Siege engines. So one of the things that Matt will be revisiting is siege engines. He's currently working on manual aiming, so he's obviously the right person to revisit siege engines. We're going to be
Obviously.
resurrecting some of the old work. We got to set it up with a new rehabilitation system. But to do that, we are going to need siege engines. So Michelle has been doing some concepting on siege engines. with the allowed time that we've got. Originally, we had planned on just doing one generic siege engine. If we have some, we do have some time, but we'll see where it goes on the art side. We're going to try and get some siege engines that are look more realm specific. So she just started the concept of that. You guys can catch that stream. We'll provide the link in the top 10 in the update. She's currently working on some art, and she's, I think, going to wait until the very last minute before I tell her to put her Wacom pen down to get as much on it as she can. Weapons. So one of the things we did last week, we talked about over the last couple of weeks, I've said we don't want to make a lot more armor and weapons simply because once we get into beta, we're going to be addressing how the visuals are going to change for the crafting system. What that's going to mean is we'll have to go back into some of the work that we have and adjust them to work for that system as it's determined. So what we've been doing is trying to put a little bit of time on making things look better. Last update you saw, John did a really big change to the armor, a lot of things we've learned, how to make things better. Even one of the screenshots that's going to be in the update today, I'm going to talk about how they've learned better ways to make materials, and you'll see that in this statue he's working on over there. But with the weapons in particular, we noticed that they were kind of looking a little wimpy. Some of the heft had just kind of visually disappeared. Even though we had built them to scale, they just looked a little tiny. So John went through and just went through a whole pile of weapons, made not just scaled them uniformly, but little elements like the axe head needed to feel a little bit heavier. The handle didn't quite fit the hand. A lot of that work took up several days this week, and now things just feel heftier, I think was the goal there. Heftier is my main word. I'm going to end off with, we did get the German site updated. This is very much my fault for it taking so long because I'm basically playing quality control over it, and I just never had time to get to it. Thanks to those who've been translating, who've been helping support this effort. Mainly Charles and Apollon are the two guys I've been talking to the most. Thanks, guys, for all the translation effort. So if you speak German and you want to see the new updated site, jump in there, check it out. And so goes the top 13.
Oh, we did good.
Yeah, right. We did under half hour.
All right, folks.
So lots of good stuff. I hope you guys are excited. A lot of testing going on, and we'll have, as long as nothing terrible happens, as happens with software development, we'll have a lot of testing going on next week too.
So, give us some questions. Focus them on producer things, art things for Tyler, and programmer things for Tim. Because these are not our designers, so avoid your design questions. Save those up for a stream with MJ or Ben. So focus on.
And did we preface we're going to do?
Yeah, we're doing a slightly
15.
short Q&A because we've got to get back to getting 2 tests going this week.
Well, we have one test
short
going.
Q&A.
Sorry, we have one test going, but I still have to get the update out and get all the instructions written up for this test. Like I said, it's a huge doc.
All right, while people are thinking of some good questions, we'll play the intro.
Who are you? Turn the stove off. Did I hear a sock?
Do you like my shirt?
When are this?
Is this my spleen? Now it is time to answer some questions.
All right. Adri Cortesia asks, "Are we there yet?"
Are we there yet? No. No. But
You'll know when we're there.
Yeah, we're making really good progress. We're all still making good progress. If you look at the last few updates, we're checking things off. We're getting into a state where we're starting to kind of cram everything together, fix bugs. That was this week, was a lot of bug fixing, and starting to turn into a game. And you're starting to see that on the visual side with getting all the animations hooked up.
Rhaegar asks, "Did Tim play an enchanter during Daok?"
I did.
What was the character's name? Rhaegar asks.
Can't get group with my Veilwalker, so I'm playing this guy.
Is that really what it was?
Yeah.
Okay, there you have it. Odolvik asks, "We've seen the very impressive Place of Power slowly taking shape. How many more / different pops do you have planned for launch? Just a little concerned given the amount of polish you like to give to these things."
I looked down at my phone, and Tim just told me I shouldn't be doing that, and then I missed the beginning of the question. Was it Pop Place of Power?
We've seen the very impressive Place of Power slowly taking shape. How many more / different pops do you have planned for launch? Just a little concerned,
Oh.
given the amount of polish you like to give to these things.
Let me see if I can figure out how I want to answer that. For right now, we're just going to do one for the beta. For launch, I don't know. That's going to be a changing concept as the game is kind of more elements of the game are built. The world is built out.
More and more lore stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are going to happen. It's pretty much impossible to say that. But I can address also the concern about the amount of time it takes to do things. While we do want to put polish on things, and I know that we've been talking about the place of power for a while, at least in the building phase. One of the difficulties with this is it's, we have a tiny team and it's a huge structure with a whole bunch of different elements. So it's just taken longer. Dion, while extremely talented, is also a junior artist, and it takes, some of my time to help her kind of just keep moving along. So when we actually get to a point where we're like, oh God, we need 5 of these, the idea here is that just like with the weapons, the armor, the environments, as the tech is built and the artists are using it, and we're even using new tools that are coming on that a lot of other studios are using. We learn a lot of shortcuts, how to make things, how to do them in a quicker way. So the goal is with this place of power, we get a bit of information on how to build such structures, and then when we get into more production of just art assets, and we'll probably look towards outsourcing things, and that will definitely speed it up. And then we can farm out a lot of the grunt work and do some of the cleanup in-house.
Well, and with the stuff, the first one is always the hardest, right?
Oh yeah, every one of these. Same thing with the items, the armor. There's a lot of kind of like lessons learned, and okay, now we know what to do the next time we do this.
Rhaegar asks, does it get hard to keep track of what code is on which server?
We generally only move from hatchery to prep to wormling. And so it's usually fairly easy just to go, okay, when was the last time we moved code from one server to the next, or from one branch to the next. Sometimes when we're doing stuff like this week has made it particularly difficult because we've been doing a lot of development bug fixes directly to Wormling because that was where we were testing things. And so it was a little bit tricky this week, but in general there's a very flow one direction and just know when the last time you moved was.
Mr. Baggins asks, just a suggestion for you guys. The
Yeah.
negative light value for the Dark Torch could allow for an interesting armor effect for stealthers leaving the Veil.
Yeah, that was just. God, how did we even get on that? It was like Andrew.
I think
Someone asked a
streamer
question.
asked Andrew while he was doing
That's what it
stuff.
was. Yeah. Basically, all we had to do was have Mike just
Becker.
change the light value to a negative value, and we got that effect. It was a really simple thing, and immediately the next thing we thought of was, well, we should probably make a negative torch, at least for now. But yeah, those kind of things that immediately the next, we all have role-playing fantasy
We get a new
backgrounds.
toy and go, what do we do with this?
But background-wise, we all think of things like, oh, this would be really cool on armor, and what if you had a negative lighting effect as you're a stealther or something like. We immediately did all the same conversations you've probably done.
Mr. Honest John asks, will there be an about-face keybind, i.e. will characters be able to turn on a dime, or will we perform a cumbersome running semicircle?
So we actually turning isn't a thing. You'll notice if you turn very quickly in the game, your camera turns faster than your character. Your character's turning rate is a stat that your character has that can be buffed and debuffed. So even if we were to put a button in place, that would basically tell our server, hey, I want to turn around, and it would still have to follow the rules of making the semicircle.
Dush Baggins asks, will we have a Rob shape to use with the fire mode?
That would be funny.
Let's see.
Get a picture of Rob and put it on the icon for the.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write that down.
Rhaegar says that you need a phone booth to change in.
Yeah, that was an awesome trailer.
Okay, Lotween asks, for Tyler, winter is almost over, and those of us who are Vikings are wondering if our homeland biome will be represented in Beta 1 like the TDDs.
It will be represented, but these aren't the homeland type of biomes. That's not the intent of this right now. This is to have enough visual differences that we can kind of say, oh, this is where the TDDs start, this is where the Vikings start. It is not intended to be indicative of exactly what the realm homelands are. We'll probably do some very specific concepting on nailing that down. We have an idea, at least Michelle has very good art direction about kind of the rules she uses for each realm. So we will probably take those rules and really just hone in on them, so that when you're starting off in your realm, it'll be very clear to you the art style for the environment. And then when you go into other areas and then have a realm ownership of those areas, and they do that shift where it looks like your realm owns it, it should be fairly clear at that point. So think of it as right now as just non-home realm biomes.
All right.
And it's not going to be all super snowy for the Vikings. We want to try to avoid
White
that.
field.
Yeah,
Solid
no
white field.
giant white field. We'll have some snow and stuff, but it's not supposed to be just the Viking version.
Absalom 33 wants to know, when did they hire Deadpool?
Like, I think he ran in right after we started the stream.
Ran.
Yeah. Well, folks, if you have more questions, fire them off now, because we're not doing a lengthy Q&A.
Yeah, sorry, it's literally just very busy.
Apparently, Twitch is having some trouble with their servers and keeps buffering.
And one thing I didn't mention, all good news on Mark's visit in Seattle. Someone asked me about that in your stream this morning. He'll be back next week, and we'll probably talk more about that next week.
Amber1 wants to know, are these the draw stuff guys, the code stuff guys, or the think up stuff guys? Or gals?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I mean, we are joking when we say, we are not totally joking when we say that, because with a small team and a startup, there's a lot of shared ideas. That's the way the studio works. There's also a lot of shared responsibility. So in some cases, my day can be providing input on materials, getting input on materials, working on environment, working on schedule, working on tasking. I mean, it's all over the place. And Tim does ops coding. What else? Ops coding, that pretty much takes up your time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I run the tests. I do QA things.
Yeah.
Sometimes I try and chime in on Mark and Vin's design discussions. I don't do the arts.
But mainly it's art and code, dude.
Art and code. Well, it's actually no.
Coach T says you
producer
guys just,
art code.
Yeah, producer art code. Coach T says you guys just gave so much info, it's hard to have anything to ask. So
Well, that's
Good.
That's good. Yeah, I think we're
You're welcome.
Grumman asks, does the CSE team have a target file size for CU, or the game file size will be as big as it needs to be?
No, well, I don't think, knowing Andrew, I don't think the second one is likely to happen. I think we will obviously want. There is certainly no goal. I don't even know if that's even worth talking about, because we're still making it, and we're going to be making it for a while.
I'm not sure if this is a design question or not, but Ladaween asks, will the Ram Siege item use the same aiming system that the archers will use?
It's subject to testing.
Subject to testing, really. It's going to be getting feedback and trying things out. That's the whole point with the manual aiming. Like we said, too much noise on it right now that was causing problems last minute. So we'll bring that in next week. And part of what we'll do is just look for, if you guys are in that test and we do specifically call out manual aiming, we really are going to say, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? We're actually looking for real feedback on how things feel, because we start getting into less of a move the camera left or right. We get more into I don't like the way the camera feels because X. So some of that will start changing next week.
Pimp My Brain asks, Megascan Studio, where do you use it in your design process?
Megascan...
Or graphic process, sorry.
Yeah, so Megascans does a whole bunch of photogrammetry, which is taking very high definition scans of real world objects. I'm going to kind of answer this in two parts. A lot of their stuff that they have is very smaller scale. You'll notice a lot of their examples are used for really tight shots of, like, oh, the moss on a log, it looks photoreal. It's extremely helpful for us just to get assets. I pulled a whole bunch of the 3D logs and trees and stuff, just because there's a lot of natural stuff that doesn't necessarily come out of an artist right off the bat, and it just saves us a lot of time. On top of that, I'm kind of piling in handmade textures on top of the things that we're pulling out of that. Right now, things do look fairly realistic. We're kind of leaning towards coming off of that a little bit, just time allowing, where we want to pad in a little bit more
Fantasy.
a little more fantasy art look to it. So I think the best example was some of the work that I was doing. I have not been able to get back to it on the bigger tree forest shots, where I literally just grabbed 3D scans of real world logs and sticks and twigs, scaled them up really big and crammed them into a tree just to give it more of a natural look that would take me hours to kind of work on. And then they get a handmade texture on them.
Right. Nanolock wants to know, do you know how many islands beta will start with?
The goal is, unless I get this wrong, it's what we have on the beta 1 list is 3 home islands, a center like contested island, and 3 smaller islands.
There you go. All right, well, you don't have any, we've finished all the questions.
Okay, well, as I say most of the time, look, we're all super committed. We are all working very hard. I can very honestly and truly tell you that on a regular basis, I've got people here staying late, just hanging out a little bit, doing a little bit of extra work. We've got a great team here. We've expanded the team. We've done what we need to do to get us to beta as quick as we can. We've been very upfront with you guys. We've been very honest. We're honest with each other here in the office. Just please bear with us. It's starting to come together. We're starting to get excited. Please, please, please jump in on tests. Even if it's a simple, hey, log in and out 10 or 15 times. Those tests are extremely important. And they just get us closer as a team and as a team of backers who are involved in this project with us, closer to our goal of being in beta 1.
And so for those of you that are like, oh, I'm just really waiting for, lots of really cool combat-y stuff to be able to play around, as we have seen in the past, if we have poor turnout for the unfun tests of, hey, let's just make sure this stuff works right or doesn't crash or any of that, if we have poor turnout for that, then when it comes time to do the, hey, let's play around with the cool new shit that they just added in, a lot of times that can turn into, well, stuff's broken and now this is just going to either not happen this week or it's going to happen in some crippled form so that we can get the information we actually need in terms of client and server stability. So a lot of times the stuff that doesn't look fun or glamorous is important to making the fun or glamorous stuff not get pushed back.
Yeah, and I mean, Tim and I are being are really stressing this point because we've picked up our testing cadence. We have a lot of things coming in. We've, over the last several months, from the end of last year into now, been hiring more people, which has picked up the amount of stuff we're able to do, which means we just need more testing on these things. Do not assume that someone else is going to go do it. Please, please, please just take the 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, 5 minutes just to help out. And what would actually be really helpful is when you guys do tests, drop onto the... when you guys do the tests, if everything goes well for you, please provide that feedback. Let us know, I jumped in, I did this is what happened, everything seemed to go great. That's as valid as saying something bad when happened. It kind of just helps us understand how many people are experiencing any one issue or not. So yeah, exactly what Tim said. We're starting to put a lot of the fun stuff together. Bear with us. We want to make sure that we have a nice solid start to beta, but make sure and get in the not fun tests as well. And I think the notes at the beginning of both tests going on this weekend to just log in and out is a lot of the beginnings of the stability stuff we really want to nail. That could probably take 10 minutes.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll
it's
do these things.
great. You're not helping. Basically, you could probably spend 10, 15 minutes and really just get the beginnings of these tests out of the way. And that, even if that's all the time you got, that'd be super helpful.
Alrighty.
That's it.
Or, if you don't have enough time to do 10 or 15 logouts, do 3 or 4 and just let us know, hey, I didn't have time to, but I did 4 and they all came out great, or I did 4 and one of them was bad, whatever.
Or I logged in Sunday, I logged in Saturday, I logged in a couple of different times, did this a few times, great.
All right. Well, I guess we will shut this down as people are ready to get back to work.
Okay, so coming up, we'll have another testing email for the IT alpha level. Those of you who have beta 1 should already have received an email earlier this morning. And then there'll be an update towards the end of the day, which will include the top 10, the user stories, and some pictures of art.
Yay.
Yay. Oh, it's
Okay.
time.
See you later.
All right then.
Bye.